How do you sort out the so-called jargon from real-world practices that work? Do the members of your organization find some business or technology advice utterly confusing? Welcome to Real Talk with Sam Holcman. In this program, we set the record straight, and in terms that business people and technology people can understand. Now, here is your host, Sam Holcman.
Welcome to this edition of Real Talk. I'm Sam Holcman. Thanks for joining me. The topic today in this particular broadcast is deploying artificial intelligence and specifically large language models. Some things to think about when you actually do this. And this thought process comes from actually software development, which we forgot about. In other words, when you're developing things, and that's really what you're doing with large language models, you're developing something or you're using something to produce something else, development, there's some things that you got to think about. And I'm not going to put these in any order, but I'm going to put this in a sort of order to get you thinking about these things. So the first thing I thought about is, how do you test this stuff? How do you test this stuff? Well, you got to come up with some test cases. Put these models to work with things that you know are correct, not hallucinating or fabricating, but correct, and see what these things produce, for you. Put some common questions together and see how these things react to those, with various combinations and changes to those, not just a question or so, and see what happens. So testing. Figure out how to put together some test cases to be able to figure out how to be able to do this. Now, once again, paralleling the software development process. How do you maintain that stuff? And most importantly, I don't even know what to call it other than how do you take stuff out, unlearn something? You find out that through your test cases and things like that there were fabrications, hallucinations that you want to remove from your set of things that you've used. How do you take them out, unlearn them, and know the effect of that learning or unlearning on the rest of your whole area of things, especially if it gives you a response that could put you and your company in some massive liability? Well, how do you get that stuff out of there? In the good old days of large systems and things like that and operating systems, there was this thing called checkpoint restart, where you can, yes, I'm dating myself, where you could say, return everything to state X, and then you can go forward. Well, how do you do these with these external large language models that you don't even know how they were generated? But this is kind of important. In other words, if things are responding in a manner that is not something that you want anymore, how do you get rid of them? Oh boy. Which comes to number 3, liability. Liability. Yep. Your stuff is generating a response of some kind, and we've seen these things already. And I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, you can't keep saying, well, the AI is hallucinating. It's not hallucinating. It's fabricating. Somebody has the keys to the kingdom. And if you're using this stuff and putting the stuff out there and you don't have the keys to the kingdom, doesn't mean that you can hide behind these, as we're finding out with all these lawsuits that are coming out. And frankly, for good reason. We got to get a little bit of control over this. How about this one? Cost. Is this stuff actually cheaper? Not only better, but cheaper. Or is it better, but more expensive? Well, that's okay, possibly. But it is actually cheaper. And we see this all the time. In other words, as some other developments subsidizing things. So, for example, in the universe that we're in right now, as to the date of this particular broadcast, we know that other services in large organizations, vendors, are subsidizing the billions being spent on AI, and eventually that's going to stop. And you and I are going to realize what the, quote, real tab is for these things. So anytime there's subsidies going on, and by the way, we see this now in manufacturing and things like that, how do I put this? Intent. The intent is to bring some initial, how do I put this in a better term that's kind, interest in these models. We give you, a popsicle or a gumdrop or something like that if you're going to try this. And of course, I'm joking with you with those types of things. In other words, subsidies. We're incenting a certain behavior, and certain people are going to take advantage of that. What happens when those incentives disappear and you get the full cost that's there? So, in summary, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If you've got a screwdriver and you got to drill a hole in the wall, you can push that thing in real hard and pound on it, and you're going to get a hole. All right, so one thing, just because you have something in your hand doesn't mean it can solve a magnitude of problems. So think about this. Yeah, a lot of this stuff sounds negative. I don't know how to put it any other way than let's pay attention to what's actually happening here and get off of this hype, advertising, belief, and other terms that are less kind. Following the herd is the nicest way I can put it, and do something that is possibly a little bit unusual now when it comes to artificial intelligence. It's called thinking.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Talk. Be sure to join your host, Sam Holcman, again for another edition of our program. We'll have more real topics of discussion then.